Everyone, Joe Waxman here. In this video, I want to look at the charts of writers. This is the Astrology of Writing. Guys, hit like, subscribe, share button, all that good stuff. Let's get right into it. Not waste any time. So you know I don't like to waste any time. All right, Maya Angelou. And for the purpose of this video, I chose mostly writers. Some of them are writers and poets because, that happens sometimes. But I did not include poets who were solely poets and who did not write anything. So just for the record. But we'll start with Maya Angelou. Leo ascendant with Neptune right on the ascendant. So that's very creative, right? Arts and etc. Then we look to the MC, see Venus, Taurus, and then Venus, exalted Venus conjunct Mercury, and it's sextile, the MC. So very promising career with a very strong Venus. Venus and Mercury are great for all the arts, really, because they really expand. Venus is going to beautify the expression. And that's kind of like a Taurus Gemini relationship. Taurus is the body, the beauty, the aesthetics. Gemini is the expression, the intellect, that sort of thing. Exalted Sun, conjunct Uranus and Jupiter and Aries, right? Neptune opposite Mars. That's really interesting. No doubt Mars, anyway, South Node Saturn. I don't want to get too into it because we've got a lot to cover, but difficult upbringing. But why writing? Well, poetry, first of all, we could definitely see with all the arts and the exalted Venus and the Taurus, right? But Mercury definitely is going to lend in a hand as far as writing goes. And I think also like the South Node Saturn, probably the Aries. See, Moon in Libra. In any case, she is very poetic. North Node in Gemini. But let's keep going. Jane Austen. I wrote a little blurb just to remind myself because I don't remember everything. So she was an English novelist whose work includes Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma North, and Persuasion. The social commentary, masterful use of both free, indirect speech and irony. One of the most influential and honored novelists. She never married and died at age 41, so it's pretty young. Okay, so Neptune again on the ascendant, just like Maya Angelou, right? So Neptune on the ascendant, it creates very exotic looks, but also artistry. Yeah, so grand air trine. So for writing, that's excellent. North MC and Gemini with Jupiter and Uranus. Moon and Saturn and Libra, and that's not super bad because Saturn is exalted, even though Moon and Saturn is not great. But she did die young. It's Mercury. Yeah, so Mercury opposite Sag. So Mercury opposite Uranus. Mercury is her ascendant lord. It's also her MC lord. So she must be very philosophical with Mercury and Sun and Sag. But Mercury is not in good dignity, and that can shorten a person's life. And it's opposite Uranus, which is shocking and sudden events or things like that, accidents. Mars and Pluto in Capricorn, where Mars is very strong. South Node in Aquarius, North Node in Leo. So we know it's like something very creative with Neptune on the ascendant, and then very mercurial. So Virgo, Gemini, ascendant MC combinations will tend to lend themselves towards writing, things like that. And let's see, Venus is in the third house. Mars is the third house cusp. Mars is exalted in the fifth, conjunct Pluto. All right, so pretty dramatic. Got the grand air trine. Yeah. Oh, Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter, Mercury. Forgot. Jupiter, Mercury, mutual reception. Mercury is in the third house. Did I say Venus was? I meant Mercury. Mercury's in the third house. So third in Jupiter. Jupiter's ruling the fourth and the seventh. But anyway, it's conjunct the MC. So third house, MC, Jupiter, Mercury. All right, let's keep going. Emily Bronte. She had a bunch of sisters, I think. Emily Bronte was a British novelist and poet, now best remembered for her only novel Wuthering Heights, classic English literature. Emily was second oldest of the three Bronte sisters, being younger than Charlotte and older than Anne. She published under the masculine pen name Ellis Bell. All right. Whose younger sister Charlotte, and fifth of six children. And Charlotte also became famous. I can't recall what for, but hold on, I'm gonna pause it because I forgot to plug in my mic. Sorry about that. Hopefully, let's get the camera in focus. Hopefully you'll notice a slightly better sound quality. That's because I just plugged in my mic. Sometimes I forget. All right, Emily Bronte. We're looking at Scorpio, Virgo, Leo, Sun, and Mercury. So Mars is the ascendant lord. That's conjunct Venus and the 10th lord in Virgo. Right. So that's the first thing. That's pretty prominent right there for a career, academic, literary, Virgo-ish type career. Mars and Venus together are very passionate, right? Think about Amy Winehouse. Well, her Venus is stationary, Amy Winehouse, but she has Mars and Venus together. In Leo, though. But in Virgo, it's going to be very passionate, academic, literary. Sun is conjunct Mercury in Leo, Moon's in Cancer, Saturn's in Pisces, Jupiter in Capricorn, Saturn's ruling the third lord and the fourth. It's not great dignity. But so here we, ascendant lord conjunct the MC with Venus in Virgo, and then Sun and Mercury in very creative Leo. A lot of times you'll have Leo being present, and then obviously Mercury, Gemini, Virgo, things like that. But I think this is why she's drawn to writing this and this right here, this top part. So, what else? Jupiter is in the third whole sign house. Maybe that has something to do with it, but it's pretty much on the second house cusp. So I'd more likely to say second house for this Jupiter in Capricorn. The Piscean influence, I mean, third lord in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces. Pisces is very creative. So even though Saturn doesn't have much dignity in Pisces, it is going to be very creative. And with the Virgo, Mars, Venus, and then Mercury and Sun in Leo, it's taking care of it. And then Saturn, see Saturn and Jupiter. Oh, yeah, mutual reception there. I didn't even notice. Duh. Moon's out of bounds. Well, Sun and Moon are in good dignity. All right, let's keep going. Charles Bukowski. And he has his nodes on the ascendant descendant axis, and I think this is probably one of the most difficult places to have it. And he had a very difficult life, very difficult upbringing, and then a lot of alcohol and women and sexuality and I don't know, probably drugs throughout his life. But he was abused as a child, a young person, and we can see that with Pluto and Cancer. It's in the third house, but it's coming up on the fourth house cusp, the IC. So so south node in Taurus, ascendant Taurus, Venus in Virgo. So Venus in Virgo again, Virgo, Venus, Saturn, Moon. And surprisingly, Venus in Virgo with Saturn here, he's not more conservative, right? He was pretty wild. But then again, that Venus is opposite Uranus in Pisces. The thing about this is that Venus is exalted in Pisces. So this Uranus is strengthened by this opposition. Not so much Uranus in Virgo, but that's what you have to look at with aspects, especially difficult aspects. Well, the trines too, you can look at that too, but like with hard aspects, squares, inconjuncts, oppositions, you want to look to see if one side benefits or hurts the other side. If one side hurts the other side by having negative dignity in that side where there's two planets, that's a bad situation. But if it helps, that's a really good situation. So his Venus is really benefiting this Uranus. So there's something very promising or prosperous about this Uranus, meaning that certain kind of brilliance with 11th house, Pisces, creativity, Uranus. So very high level, high-minded, sophisticated, brilliant, genius kind of thing. Let's see, MC is Saturn. So yeah, Venus and MC Lord are in Virgo. So that's very strong for a career in academics, writing, things like that. Sun and Jupiter and Leo, and Neptune and Mercury, that's all very creative. So very creative academic type stuff. North Node conjunct Mars in Scorpio, like that explains a lot of his relationships because he was out there partying all the time, like even as an old man, drinking, smoking, having sex with women, probably young women, right? And that's North Node in the seventh. Definitely seeking other people very much. Going. William Burroughs. William Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch, but he was known for being a drug addict. He was an opiate addict. A condition that marked the last 50 years of his life. Of the last 50, that's like most of his life. It's a funny way of saying it. Primary member of the Beat Generation, avant-garde author. Yeah. So he wrote The Naked Lunch. Very crazy, weird, but look at this Aquarius stellium with the ascendant in Aquarius, right? We got Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, Sun, Mercury, all in Aquarius. Mercury is right on the ascendant. And so Mercury on the ascendant is going to indicate somebody who's very intellectual. Aquarian, very weird, strange, which he was. North Node Chiron in the first house, basically, in Pisces. Highly creative, highly weird, right? The Chiron. And then South Node Virgo, of course. And then Moon, Saturn, Pluto, and Gemini in the fourth house. Third Lord's Venus in the first house, conjunct the Sun. So you can see it's very strong for sort of creative academics, which definitely sort of lends itself to writing, very much so. Mars is in Cancer, and that's not so good. That's loose aggression with no sort of aggression that's fueled by emotions. So that's not such a good thing when Mars is in Cancer. It can be violent or sexual. In this case, drug addicted in the fifth house. He likes to have fun too much. Neptune is here in the fifth house. He just really likes to have a lot of fun, very weird and creative and strange. All right, let's keep going. Lewis Carroll. Alice in Wonderland, The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland. All right. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, as well as poems Hunting of the Snark and Jabberwocky. literary nonsense, but great nonsense. His facility of wordplay, logic, and fantasy has delighted audience ranging from children and literary elite. And beyond, this work has become embedded deeply in modern culture, directly influencing many artists. So he's got his moon right on the ascendant. And, this right away made me think of the Cheshire Cat, right? Because don't we see like the Cheshire Cat, like one of the images where we just see the smile and we think it's the moon, and then we see it's the Cheshire Cat? Well, that's right here. And moon on the ascendant is so expressive. I always say it's like wearing your heart on your sleeve, right? Okay. Then we got this again, this Aquarius stellium for like the craziness, the weirdness, the absurdity, with Sun, South Node, Uranus, and Jupiter. Jupiter is the ascendant lord, right? So very strong Aquarian influence for the weirdness. And that's really straddling the third house cusp. Second, moving into the third, right? Jupiter taking most of the third house, and being in the, within the third house, in Aquarius. Let's see, Venus is ruling the MC. That's conjunct Mars. Venus, Mars, again, very passionate here in Sag. Mercury's in Capricorn in the second. And second is still good for writers because it helps with the expression. It helps with the body of the work. It fills it out. It gives it like beauty and fullness, sensuality. Saturn is in conjunct Uranus. Uranus in Aquarius. And that's interesting, actually, because Saturn rules Aquarius and Uranus also co-rules Aquarius. So that is a very interesting in conjunct. It shows tension that is released, at least partially, down here on the Uranus side, where it's basically conjunct the third house cusp, right? So very strong for writing. North Node in Leo. Chiron is square the nodes. And Chiron again, the weird planet. People have a very monolithic view of Chiron. I see it again and again and again, and I've gone to great lengths to try and show that Chiron is much more than the wounded healer. People are just like have a monolithic brain. They're like, Chiron, wounded healer. That's all it is, wounded healer. Like, oh my god, how stupid can you be? Like, planets do more than just one thing, but they can only think wounded healer, like parroting. That's where your wounds are. Oh, you look Chiron, that's where you're hurt. That's where your wound. That's it. That's the only thing they can ever say about Chiron, right? I just noticed that he has a grand Earth trine. And I'm not saying that Chiron can't inflict wounds. It does so by being weird. That's the whole thing, right? If your face is weird, like, how do you get there? Well, maybe you've been wounded, right? That's what happened to Sylvester Stallone, and he has a Chiron thing. It's only when it's in really bad aspect. But here we have the square the nodes to Chiron and Uranus. And that's on the sixth house cusp. So there could have been issues with his health due to this Chiron. Some weird health issues, right? Strange. In any case, I don't want to spend too long on this, but yeah. So a lot of third house Aquarian influence with a very solid Mercury and Capricorn is very serious, right? So this is something that's going to be not too overly creative. Writing has a certain academic quality to it, right? And that's we'd see very much with Virgo, Capricorn, I mean even Taurus. But in any case, let's keep going. It's a mixture of like creativity and hard work, effort, intellectual, academia, I could say. Creativity and academia is very much writing. So E. Cummings. Let's look at E. All right. Probably known as well-known American poet. I think he's primarily a poet, but he did write books as well. painter, essayist, and playwright. His body work encompasses more than 900 poems, several plays and essays, numerous drawings, sketches, and paintings, as well as 2 novels. Yeah, he's a very popular poet. All right. So he's got Pluto and Neptune right on the ascendant in Gemini, right? So Gemini ascendant, Aquarius MC, Jupiter in Cancer in the second, and that's also benefiting the 3rd house cusp, right? Because it's same sign. Very strong Libra stellium with Chiron, South Node, Venus in domicile, Sun not in good dignity, but Saturn. So his Sun is sandwiched between very dignified planets, Saturn and Venus. So that's quite good overall. Mercury conjunct Uranus, high in Scorpio. Brilliant. That's brilliant. That's genius. Look at that. So good. And then Mercury is in conjunct Neptune. And that's wild because Mercury rules Neptune. And then Pluto, also tying in a little further, but co-rules Scorpio. So again, this in conjunct is not a bad one. It's helpful. It's tension that's releasing itself, so it's a good in conjunct. Right. North Node Aries, Moon Mars and Aries. This one is worrying. I had to look this up. I saw this and I was like, there's a problem, and here's a learning lesson. This is a dangerous opposition. Why? Because Mars is strong. Now Mars is conjunct Moon, and it depending on the house this could be very bad for Moon. But it's 11th house. And so 11th house is not a very personal house. It's actually 12th house cusp. Sorry. 12th house cusp. But Mars is very strong in Aries, and it's in domicile. And it's opposite Saturn, but it's also a little bit opposite Sun. And the Sun is in poor dignity. Saturn's okay. Sun's in poor dignity. And Mars also is in poor dignity in Libra. So Mars can attack the Sun. And just to show you what this means is that there was a very tragic car accident that he was in, or his parents were in, and his father died. His father was killed in the car accident. His mother lived. That's this. And I knew something was up with that. I had to look it up because of this opposition. So if especially Mars, but it could be other planets, if it's in a very strong position and it's aspecting a planet where it's aspecting either Libra or where else? Cancer, right? Planets in Cancer, then it can harm them, especially if they're not in good dignity. All right, let's see here. So Moon is 3rd lord. Moon is conjunct a very strong Mars. Mercury is conjunct Uranus and Scorpio in the 6th house. Look at all the hard lines going everywhere. He does have one really nice trine. It's mostly Venus to Pluto. That's fine. Venus is already in good dignity. Pluto and Neptune makes them very creative and powerful. And Gemini, right? Gemini ascendant. Saturn's ruling the MC. Saturn is exalted in Libra, conjunct the Sun. Not really aspecting the MC, but it's still very good. IC is in the 3rd whole sign house, ruled by the Sun. And Sun's not in good dignity, but it's surrounded by 2 planets in good dignity. And South Node Venus, South Node Chiron. So yeah, Gemini with a very strong, brilliant Mercury in Uranus. 6th house, 5th house for creativity. That's very poetic right here. And then Jupiter, benefiting the 3rd house, exalted Jupiter, benefiting the 3rd house, 3rd cusp. All right, let's keep going. Dickens considered the second greatest writer of all time behind William Shakespeare. I did not include William Shakespeare partly because I'm not convinced. I question the authenticity of his birth chart. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but I don't know. There's a whole lot of, I mean, even William Shakespeare, if he was one person, there's a lot of debate about that. So anyway, William Shakespeare is not included, but anyway, so he's got the very standard, this is the ascendant MC combination that I would choose to see for writers: Virgo, Gemini, right? And then Jupiter, Gemini in the 10th house, clearly, right? North Node in Virgo, and then Mercury in Capricorn, along with Saturn in domicile in Capricorn in the 5th house. Saturn's more in the 4th, but moving into the 5th whole sign house, right? So very strong Saturn, very strong Mercury, which is the MC Lord and the Ascendant Lord. Mercury's strong because of Saturn. Saturn's also dispositing the Sun and Chiron. And then we got South Node, exalted Venus, and Pluto, moving from the 6th into the 7th. Venus and Pluto are pretty much conjunct the descendant. Mars is in Aries. Moon conjunct Neptune, so very creative moon in Sagittarius. Right. Let me just check. Jupiter is the only retro planet, so he wasn't very religious, conventionally religious anyway. All right. Chiron is trine Jupiter. And then Mercury's trine the ascendant. So that's very strong. So you can see, like, very literary, very academic, strong Saturn and Mercury. Sun is not great, but okay. It's in the 6th house. It's disposited by a very strong planet. And then exalted Venus, conjunct South Node and Pluto. Very intense, very dramatic. Mars in domicile. Mars ruling the 3rd house. So that's very good for the 3rd house things, especially also Uranus in Scorpio. Uranus in Scorpio does excellent. Uranus is sextile Mercury. So a lot of really prominent things going on, really strong things having to do with creativity and academia and hard work. So writing seems to be, I mean, of course we could come to this conclusion without astrology, but once again, a mix of creativity and academia. Right? It's not pure creativity like the visual arts, which can often be in any case. Here's Emily Dickinson. There seems to be a bit more intellectual involvement with writing, obviously, than the visual arts. Music could go either way, I think. Music can be very academic, very intellectual. All right. Emily Dickinson was an American poet. It's kind of regarded along with Walt Whitman as one of the two quintessential American poets. She wrote 1,789 poems, only a handful of. Did she write any novels? Okay, so maybe she's just a poet. My bad. But anyway, I included her. I did not include most other poets only, but I'm not a literary buff, I guess. But Scorpio ascendant, MC in Leo, but then Saturn and North Node in Virgo. We get a lot of that Virgo with the writers. And then we got Venus, Sun, Mercury in Sagittarius in the 2nd house. So she must be very philosophical. Jupiter and Neptune in Capricorn. So very, very interesting. That's conjunct the 3rd house cusp. So again, third house for writing, but Jupiter and Capricorn. Jupiter and Capricorn is not. It's debilitated because it's opposite. It's as exaltation in Cancer, but Neptune's very creative. But this is very hard. Capricorn is good for writing. You know, any of the Earth signs are very good for writing because it's very dry and practical. Uranus is an Aquarius in the third house, so that's very good. Mars is in Aries with Pluto, very intense in the fifth house. Moon in the 12th, great for creativity. Uranus is sextile Pluto and Mars by extension. Let's see. So Saturn's ruling the third. That's in the 10th. Third Lord, 10th house, North Node. Bingo. I mean, that's very prominent for a writer. For an academic, a literary, an intellectual. Ascendant Lord Mars is exalted, or sorry, in domicile with Pluto. That's very intense. In any case, let's keep going. Dostoevsky. Still got a lot to cover. All right. Mercury conjunct the ascendant from the 12th. Uranus, Venus, Neptune, and Capricorn. Again, Capricorn. And this is really interesting because Venus is becoming very Uranian and Neptunian and in Capricorn. Capricorn is a planet that Venus is not terribly bad, but not very good either. Very practical though, hardworking. Jupiter is the ascendant lord. That's conjunct Saturn in Aries. Saturn in Aries is not good. It's a semi-square to Mercury, and that does nothing either except for Jupiter. Not semi-square, sesquisquare. Jupiter rules Sag. So Jupiter is dignifying this Mercury through sesquisquare, which is not an easy one, but it is what it is. It does exist. It is an aspect, is what I mean. Don't mean to be so vague. Chiron is square Neptune and Venus, so adding a bit of weirdness, maybe some painful things. Moon's in Gemini on the descendant. Mars, that's really strong. Mars is dignifying this Saturn-Jupiter combination in the fifth house, right? Through a trine. That's excellent. Saturn really not doing anything for this Mars because it's not good in Saturn's not good in Aries or Leo. And Jupiter, I mean Jupiter's trine its domicile in Aries or Leo, so that's okay, right? But Mars is benefiting these guys. Ascendant Lord, and then MC Lord is Venus. That's in the first house, essentially. Sun's in the 11th in Scorpio. So Dostoevsky, wow, where are we getting the writing from? Mercury opposite Moon and Gemini, because Mercury is really benefiting this Gemini. That's very prominent. That's going to be really good. And then, you know, these other things are quite, let's see. Capricorn's very practical. Jupiter and Saturn Aries is, I don't know, very good for leader. That's on the IC. So there's something about his home or his childhood or his homeland that very leadership or authoritative, or he probably had some teacher early on who guided him. But in any case, yeah, this is very for writing. I would look at this. And South Node in Virgo. And then Where's the third lord? Third lord is Jupiter. So North Node conjunct the third house cusp, basically. With Jupiter being dignified by Mars, and in turn dignifying this Mercury. In any case, let's keep going. Arthur Conan Doyle. He is famous for writing Sherlock Holmes. This is a really interesting one. So Gemini ascendant, Aquarius MC, Mars and Jupiter right on the ascendant, Mars right on the ascendant, Jupiter in the first house. Then Sun conjunct Uranus in Gemini. So a whole lot of Gemini going on in the 12th. Okay, what's really interesting is he wrote Sherlock Holmes. So Sherlock Holmes is a detective. So where are we getting this brilliant kind of well, Sun conjunct Mars from the Sun conjunct Uranus in Gemini in the 12th house. The 12th house is bringing in that secret quality, the hidden, how Sherlock Holmes is always observing that's the brilliance of Gemini and Uranus and Sun. And then all this Gemini as well. And then Mercury itself is in Taurus conjunct Pluto. Pluto's the psychologist, right? So Mercury conjunct Pluto is going to be very, very deep thinking, very, very penetrating. And that's also on the 12th house cusp. Right? Venus is in Aries. That's not great, but it's okay. Moon's at 0 degrees Aquarius. Aquarius is very high level thinking. So it applies to so many things. It's just like understanding like energetics and wave patterns and all the brilliant things. People with a lot of planets in Aquarius, well, they can go different ways, but intellectually or academically, they just understand very, very high level thinking. Energetics. Moon's trine the sun. Exactly. This is excellent. Saturn's ruling the MC. Saturn's in Leo. That's not good, but it's actually conjunct the IC, which in fact benefits the MC, because you always have to look opposite. If there's a point or a planet opposite, a planet will influence that planet in that dignity. So Saturn's in poor dignity in Leo on the IC, but it's in good dignity in Aquarius, so that benefits the MC. Benefits the moon too, in Chiron North Node. Yeah. So this is really interesting. Neptune is very prominent, high in the sky. It's not conjunct the MC, but it is high in the sky, and that is conjunct the in very creative Pisces in domicile, 11th house cusp. Yeah. So I think that's it for Arthur Conan Doyle. You can see the detective work, a lot of 12th house, Gemini stuff, and then Mercury, Pluto. All right. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Brilliant writer. Very, very beautiful writing. He's got Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Libra, Chiron in the 8th, 9th house. And then Uranus, Saturn, and Scorpio in the 9th, but 10th whole sign house, moving into the MC. You have to look either side of the cusp. I know people are like, if it's like 1 degree shy of a cusp, they'll be like, oh, it belongs to the house before. Absolutely not, especially if it's in the same sign. It's very strongly influencing the cusp, just like a planet 1 degree, 1 degree orb from the ascendant in the 12th is still conjunct the ascendant. So if it's conjunct the cusp, even before, it's still influencing that house. North node in Aquarius, south node Jupiter in Leo. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Let's see. So Saturn's the ascendant lord. Saturn's 9th, 10th. Strongly, I would say 10th house, along with Uranus. So Uranus is conjunct, and Uranus is also the co-ruler. So these are both the co-rulers. of Aquarius in the 10th house. So very strong career, Scorpio, Mars and Gemini, along with Neptune and Pluto, tightly conjunct Neptune. So very creative. So the career's creative career, literary career in the 5th house, Gemini in the 5th house. Moon's in Taurus and good dignity in the 3rd house. Right, so that's all very strong for writing. Venus is exactly in trine and sextile the nodes, respectively. Pluto, sesquisquare Chiron. He did have issues with relationships. That comes through in his books. He writes about that a lot. I didn't read all of his books. I read, I think, one of his books, but beautiful writer. That's that, very strong Libra. He writes a lot about relationships and money, rich kids, things like that. In any case, let me just check here real quick. Very slow Mercury. That's almost stationary, his Mercury. And that's very, very significant because stationary planets, like I always say, are extremely potent. So Mars is ruling the 3rd house cusp, along with the MC. Mercury is ruling 8th and 5th. 5th house in particular is of importance. Let's keep going. Khalil Gibran wrote the 3rd most translated book of all time, The Prophet. So he's excellent, brilliant writer. Lebanese American artist, poet, and writer, is born in today's Lebanon and spent much of his life in the United States. All right. Moon and Venus exactly conjunct the ascendant in Sagittarius. So highly expressive, highly beautiful, creative type person, philosophical, spiritual, right? But then he's got his Mars and Sun in Capricorn and Mercury. So he's very, very practical, very business minded as well, like very much a doer. Saturn's ruling the 2nd and 3rd lords. Saturn's in Taurus, along with exactly conjunct South Node Neptune, right? So 2nd and 3rd lord and dispositor of the Sun, Mars, and Mercury is conjunct South Node and Neptune. So South Node shows familiarity, something that a skill that he's had from the past, and that would be Taurian, so something very beautiful, and Neptune, creative. Chiron, definitely going into the weirdness, and Pluto, very powerful. Jupiter's in Gemini, excellent for a writer in the 7th house. And then Uranus is in Virgo, Virgo MC. Right, so we go Mercury, and there's a light trine here between MC Lord Mercury and the MC and Uranus. So that's very good. Excuse me. Yeah, then North Node Scorpio, 12th house. That's very, very spiritual. North Node Scorpio, 12th house. Because it's water. So very, very going very, very deep. So he's a highly philosophical type person, even though Jupiter is in Gemini. Moon, ascendant, Venus, and Sag. And Jupiter is, even though it's not exactly opposite these guys, it's still positively influencing that because it's opposite. So anyway, that's Khalil Gibran. Check here. A lot of retrogrades. Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Hemingway needs no introduction. One of the most famous writers of all time, Ernest Hemingway, especially American, one of the American classic writers. So Virgo, Gemini, We're seeing that combination here. And then Mercury in the 12th house in Leo, right? So we got the Virgo Gemini for the literary communication, and then Mercury is in highly creative Leo. Mars is in the first house, and Hemingway was quite aggressive. He definitely had a very aggressive side to him. So, Sun, Venus, and Cancer. South Node, Neptune, Pluto, Gemini, so MC, and then all these in Gemini. A lot of Gemini, Pluto, Neptune's very creative, Pluto, very powerful, South Node, familiar, and then Sag, Jupiter's in the thirds in Scorpio, with Mars in the first in Virgo. Third Lord in the first in Virgo. It's very strong for writing. A lot of home influence, home, house, land. I'm not sure how that relates. Fourth house. He did end up killing himself, so we have to look at that. That's Moon in Capricorn. Moon and Capricorns are very competent, but they have a difficult time being happy because of their inability to express themselves. Moon is the heart, the happiness, right? And in Capricorn, it can't really express, it can't function as well. So Moon in Capricorn can be very unhappy. Now we have a difficult aspect to Mercury, which is his ascendant lord. So Mercury is sextile Neptune. So that's great in Gemini, great for creativity. Mercury in Leo in the 12th, which is the MC Lord and Ascendant Lord. So we have to look to Mercury a lot. And then we see it's sextile Neptune and South Node. So that's great for writing and creativity. Where it gets difficult is that it's, number one, it's in the 12th. The 12th, and the thing about the 12th house is that it's good for a lot of things, but it can pull someone into the afterlife, the dream world, the spirit world. So there can be thoughts of, if you're thinking about the spirit world, the netherworld, the dream world, there's a chance that you might want to go there. I say this because I have Pluto in the 12th with a Scorpio ascendant. It's not uncommon. And he's got Jupiter in Scorpio. Jupiter in Scorpio, sextil square Pluto in Gemini. Pluto is very prominent, but Pluto rules Scorpio. So that's not so bad. But Jupiter in Gemini is not good. That could be something. Jupiter is ruling the 7th and the 4th. And it's dispositing all these planets here. I think it's the Moon in the 5th. I think he's just not happy. Moon is opposite Venus. That's good for Venus. And 11th house and career success, because Moon does very well in Cancer. But this Moon is not so hot. Opposite the body, the Ascendant Lord, the MC Lord. This just shows unhappiness. So he's very unhappy. And then Mars is in the 1st. Mars is ruling the 8th. Bingo. Yeah. So that's difficult. He shot himself, and he was an alcoholic. All right, let's go to Aldous Huxley. So Aldous Huxley, he wrote, let me just read it. He's an English writer, one of the most prominent members of the famous Huxley family. He spent the latter part of his life in the United States, living in Los Angeles. Novels and essays, short stories, poetry, travel writing, film stories, scripts. Huxley functioned as sometimes critical of social mores, norms, and ideas. Huxley was a humanist. Spiritual subjects, parapsychology, philosophical mysticism. So Huxley wrote, what was his book called? Now I'm drawing a blank. It's 1984, and I read the book. Hold on. I have to. Sorry. Sorry about that. Brave New World, of course, is the book that he is famous for, which I read. Highly dystopian novel. That I'm not sure. Did it serve more as a warning for people to wake up to, or more of a blueprint to give ideas to the psychopaths in charge? To him and Orwell with 1984. I think they were blueprints, as much as they also served to wake people up to the horrors of it all. Maybe it was inevitable. Maybe it would have happened anyway, but don't know. Any case, Gemini, very strong. Pluto, Neptune, Jupiter, conjunct the Gemini ascendant with Aquarius MC. So Mercury's in Cancer in the second house. Sun is in Leo in the third house. Venus is in Cancer at 0 degrees. So definitely expression, writing. With Sun in Leo in the third house, it's very creative writing. South Node, Saturn in Libra in the fifth house. Sun is trine the North Node. North Node's in the 11th house, but MC's in Aquarius. So MC's in Aquarius, and he writes about social issues, social, political. That's very Aquarian, by the way. Politics, social issues, society, right? Because Aquarius is utopia, dystopia. It's thinking about society and politics and the whole world, really. Very big picture. And then 11th house is a repetition of that theme. Moon's in exalted in Taurus. Mars is in Aries and domicile, North Node in Aries. So very obsessed with 11th house issues, career success, as well as society, groups, networks, politics, right? And then creativity, moving into the 12th house with the moon. And these planets are pulling in some 12th house into the first house. So Gemini, writing, social critic. And then, let's see, Uranus is in Scorpio in conjunct Pluto in Gemini. That's very interesting, right? Because Pluto is the co-ruler of Scorpio. Uranus is actually very interesting in Gemini too. So this is an interesting in conjunct. It's not a bad one because neither side is hurting the other side. It's just really tense, and they're not personal planets either. They're two outer planets just kind of being very creating tension, getting a lot of tension that does have some release to it. And Mars also in conjunct Chiron. Mars in good dignity. That's actually quite painful with this Chiron, where we can bring in the weirdness. When Chiron's already weird, if it has a bad aspect, it can become damaged. Too weird's no good, right? Then we have this really strong opposition of Mars and Saturn, where they're both in good dignity. But Saturn is in poor dignity in Aries, and Mars is in poor dignity in Libra. I'd have to do a little bit of research, but let's try. All right, Mars ruling the 11th and the 6th. Saturn exalted in the 5th, ruling the MC, the 8th, 9th, and 10th by the cusp. But 8th, 9th, so it is the 8th ruler. So that's really interesting. There must have been some weird events in his life that kind of shook him up or something, changed him a bit. I don't know. There's something going on here between this Mars and Saturn. I'd have to look and see how that plays out, but that's not It's good and then it's not good. All right. But we can see like the writing very strongly here in the Gemini, and then the social criticism with this MC in Aquarius and 11th house planets. It's got a lot of dignified planets. This moon gets 13 points. Everything gets points except for Jupiter. Mercury's retro. So Mercury's retrograde. That's the only retrograde. And his whole thing is retrograde. Like his whole thing is going against society. It's interesting that how one planet can make a person very retrograde, I guess you could say. But he's got third lord and third sign, so that's very strong for writing as well. Keep going. James Joyce, Irish writer, one of the best, one of the most highly regarded writers. So Capricorn ascendant, Scorpio MC. But the whole, well then first, all right, Venus conjunct Sun in Aquarius. But then a whole Taurus stellium with Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter, Chiron, Pluto. And then mutual reception between Venus and Saturn. Caught that one. And that's by degree as well. And it's square. It's a square. Mars and Gemini. Mars is stationary in Gemini, along with South Node. So we get the Gemini 6th house for the writing. Mars is the MC Lord. It's also the exaltation Lord of Capricorn. And you can say it that way. If a planet's exalted in a sign, you can say it's the exaltation Lord. So Mars is the exaltation Lord of the ascendant and the domicile Lord of the MC. It's stationary, so super potent in Gemini. 6th house. He was a champion of the working class in the 4. That's very 6th house kind of thing. Because workers and all that, daily grind. Jupiter in Taurus is trine exactly Uranus in Virgo. And that's not bad. Moon's in Leo. In the 7th house, 8th cusp, but 7th house. But yeah, we're getting the Venus, Saturn, mutual reception. And then Mercury's in Pisces, right? Very creative Pisces. Not dignified in Virgo, but yeah, that's interesting. Mercury's ruling the 6th house and the fifth cusp. And not really ruling a cusp here, but so let's see. A lot of this is coming down to Mars. Sometimes the most potent planet, the strongest planet wins, right? A lot of times you can look at it like that. The most dignified, and the stationary is one of the significators of the most potent. So if a planet is stationary, that could be, the person's career goal in life, right? Saturn's trying the ascendant, and that's excellent because Saturn is dignifying the ascendant. Saturn's the ascendant lord, so that's very good. But this here, Mars in Gemini stationary in the 6th house is and South Node in Gemini, and then of course Taurus for the sensuality in the arts, and then Sun and Venus for the I mean, Aquarius, if you know his writing, he does get very weird. And that I would do to ascribe to the Aquarius and Mercury in Jupiter, Mercury in Pisces. Because like in one of his later books, he writes in multiple language. He was very hard to understand anyway. And I think that's Mercury in Pisces. Mars ruling the 3rd house cusp, by the way, in Gemini stationary. So it's definitely Mars is the big influence there. All right, that's James Joyce. Now, let me just check here. Yeah, Mars Station. That's excellent, and it's out of bounds. So Mars, if it's in Gemini, if it's potent, if it's stationed, that can make for an excellent writer. James Joyce, one of the best. And then Venus, Saturn, mutual reception. Definitely dignifying the Venus and Venus ruling the IC and the ninth house cosm. It's actually the 10th whole sign house. Anyway, let's keep going. Kafka wrote the Metamorphosis, wrote many things. I don't know if I wrote a little blurb for him. Middle class Jew based in Prague. Many incomplete, mostly published, most published posthumously. Become amongst the most influential in Western literature. Wrote a lot of different stuff, including a man who becomes a roach, a big bug, Metamorphosis. He also wrote about a story about a person who fasts for a living and then eventually starves to death because it's not a good career choice. So just in case you had in mind, like maybe you're thinking like maybe I'll be a faster, like I'll just starve myself and get attention that way. Not really good. Doesn't work out very well. Anyway, Leo ascendant, Aries MC, Sun conjunct Jupiter in Cancer in the 12th. Highly creative, highly sensitive. Jupiter is exalted. Then we get Mercury, Moon, and Venus in Gemini. Again, brilliant, right? So very creative. This is very surreal, right? This is where we're getting like the Metamorphosis type stuff. And then a lot of the writing, and we got Chiron and Saturn, a lot of Gemini going on, and then of course Taurus as well. South Node, Neptune, Mars. Mars ruling the MC in the 10th house, 10th Lord and 10th house. Very strong here for career success, and then creativity. Uranus in Virgo in the 2nd. Venus is ruling the 3rd. That's conjunct Mercury in Gemini and domicile. Exactly. 1930. Bingo. Right? Venus, 3rd Lord cusp, conjunct Mercury and Gemini and Moon. Saturn, Chiron. Like, born to write. North Node in Scorpio in the 4th. And again, for that Metamorphosis, North Node in Scorpio, that's very prominent. And that's trine the Sun and Jupiter. All right. Let's keep, let me just check here. All direct. Everything's direct. That's amazing, except for the nodes, which is normal. And it's interesting that he has all direct planets, obviously, except for the nodes. And he writes a book called Metamorphosis, which is does not seem very direct, but it is, I guess. Stephen King. Needs no introduction, writes horror books. I don't like Stephen King. I don't like him as a character, and I don't like his books. I don't like the horror genre, but he is very successful, so I thought I'd include him. All right. 29-degree ascendant with Mars in Scorpio. Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer conjunct the ascendant from the 12th house. Mars in Cancer is violent. Okay? Not always, but a lot of times. So violence, right away we can see here. Mars is ruling the 5th house cusp and the MC. Okay, so creative, 1st house, emphasizing his name, Stephen King, we know his name. MC, violence. Mercury is ruling the 3rd house. Mercury is in Libra along with Venus and Neptune. Sun's in Virgo in the 3rd house. So very strong 3rd house. Yeah, with Sun and then moving into the 4th house, but 3rd Lord, 4th house. Sun is 2nd Lord, 3rd house. Uh, Saturn and Pluto. Saturn and Pluto together is hyper serious. So that's also where you're getting this no fun kind of violence, right? It's coupling up with Mars and Cancer, violent, and then Pluto and Saturn and Leo. That it creates this hyper serious expression, hyper serious voice. It's too intense, even in Leo. It's just very, and then he expresses that well with the moon trine this Pluto and Saturn in Sag. And then South Node, Jupiter and Chiron and Scorpio. Scorpio also for horror, for darkness, things like that. Uranus and Gemini, excellent for a writer. Uranus in conjunct South Node. Not worried about that. Uranus square the sun. So it was something very shocking. And remember, actually, he was in a horrible accident himself. He got hit by a car and like crushed like pretty much every bone in his body. So that maybe we could look at, well, same things that drives him to write about horror. We could attribute that to his accident. Mars and Cancer in the first. Let's see, Saturn is the 8th lord. That's conjunct Pluto and Leo in the first house, right? First, second. So we get 12th first, first, second. Any case, that's Stephen King. See a lot of seriousness, heaviness, violence, and academia. Right. And he was also a teacher. That relates to 4th house because schoolhouse, right? House, brick and mortar. And then 5th house, Jupiter, South Node Jupiter. All right. Moon and Sag. Just check here. Again, everything's direct. Nothing is retrograde. And we see that actually in his politics. Like the guy couldn't notice real corruption if it bit him on the nose. He's completely conventional, completely goes with the flow. And I see that with people who have planets that are all direct. They just have no ability to go against the grain. It's like whatever the government says, whatever CNN says, they're like, how dare you disagree with CNN? They get all mad and self-righteous, and they're like, how can you disagree with the government? The government is always telling the truth, right? Stephen King, you're an idiot. Stephen King, you're a goddamn idiot. Ursula Le Guin, I actually never read anything about her, but she's considered one of the best sci-fi writers of modern day. I couldn't even name a single one of her books. All right, American novelist, mainly in fantasy and sci-fi, children's books, short stories, poetry, essays, futuristic, imaginary, alternative worlds and politics, natural environment, gender. She referred to an American novelist. She described America's greatest living science fiction writer. Okay, good. All right. Taurus ascendant, North Node, Chiron, Taurus, Moon Libra, Venus in Libra, Mercury in Libra, Mars in Scorpio, South Node. What are we looking for? So Venus is our ascendant lord. Venus is in the 6th house conjunct Mercury. So Venus is in domicile. Her ascendant lord is in domicile conjunct Mercury. Mercury is directly opposite Uranus. So again, there's that brilliance. Neither of them have any sort of positive, negative dignity with either of these signs. So that's okay. It's just generally a very active, brilliant mind. Right? Mercury opposite Uranus. Moon conjunct Jupiter and Gemini. Moon Jupiter is a great combination. And that's conjunct the 3rd house cusp. Right? 2nd house moving to the 3rd house in Gemini. So for writing, perfect. Pluto's in Cancer in the fourth, so possibly a difficult upbringing with her parents, especially mother. Sun's not so great in Libra, but Venus is, and they're wide apart, but that still helps. So Mars opposite Chiron. So that's not so good for Chiron. So there's something about herself, her body, I wonder if she has any physical handicap, because that's not a good one. But I don't know anything about her. And then North Node on the angles, also very difficult. On the ascendant descendant angle. I have that. It shows that, she's driven into herself with Chiron. Chiron in the first house is weird. These are weird people, very chironic. And Mars is hurting this Chiron and this North Node because it does not do well in Taurus. It's exalted in, so relationships are good, generally speaking, but she's kind of bossy. They'd be much better when they're young. Hot relationships when she's young. Older, maybe not so many relationships, if any. But we're talking about sixth house, and then Saturn's ruling the MC. It's in the ninth house, so philosophical and adventurous. But the brilliance, a lot of the brilliance comes from here in this Venus. So this Mercury is doing very well. It's the third lord, with Moon and Jupiter and Gemini. So, I think that explains a lot as far as her being a writer. Jupiter's retro, Uranus retro. I'm for sci-fi. I think it's this. A lot of the sci-fi is this. Also Neptune, trine the ascendant for creativity. And Chiron for sci-fi. Also Chiron because it's just so strange and odd. So Chiron in the first house. Writing in general, Moon, Jupiter, that's very good for writing. The Mercury opposite Uranus with conjunct Venus and domicile. Right. Okay. Keep going. George Railroad Martin. I don't know if it's railroad, but in Family Guy, that was one of the jokes. He goes, George R.R. Martin, his middle name, the R.R. stands for railroad. Anyway, whatever. George Railroad Martin. And he wrote what was it? The TV show? All right, American author. Personally, he's written fantasy, horror, sci-fi. And for his sins, spent 10 years in Hollywood as a writer-producer, working on The Twilight Zone, Beauty and the Beast, various features. And in the 90s, he returned to prose. First love began working on his epic fantasy series, A Song of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones. I don't know why they don't even mention that, but that's what he's known for. Game of Thrones. All right. Taurus ascendant with Aquarius MC. Let's see here. So Venus is conjunct Pluto in Leo. Interesting that Game of Thrones. What do you think throne is? Throne is a fourth house thing. Why? Because land, kingdom, home, castle, brick and mortar. So that's very clearly a fourth house thing. Leo is royalty. Pluto, power, control. So Game of Thrones, right here. Bingo. Game of Thrones. That doesn't explain his writing, but he wants to be king of his own castle. So he's thinking about, who's going to be the king of the land. Game of Thrones. Sun is in Virgo, very academic, literary, trine the ascendant in the fifth house, very good. Mercury's in Libra, Libra is an air sign, so that definitely lends itself to that. Mercury's in Scorpio with South Node for the violence, the sexuality, the intensity, very strong, 6th house. Series, 6th house. Right? Epic movie would be more 12th, but like a long ongoing series, TV show, periodical, magazine, regular radio, anything like that that's regular, that's 6th house. Jupiter's in Sag in the 8th. So 8th house, very strong for powerful relationships, right? Dominating relationships. North Node in Taurus, Moon in Aries. Third Lord, Moon's ruling the third Lord in the 12th in Aries. That's great for creativity. Let's see here. Saturn's ruling the MC. So the Sun and MC Lord are both in Virgo in the 5th house. So academic creativity, so writing, producing as well, right? Neptune in the 5th, Mercury in the 6th, TV shows. Let's see here. And then the theme would be here, Game of Thrones. Yeah, just very creative kind of guy overall. Everything's direct. Now, good thing I haven't heard George Railroad Martin's politics, because he'll probably be like, listen to CNN and Joe Biden and the government. They're telling the truth always, 100%. Dr. Fauci's a hero. Probably something stupid like that. All right. Saturn, Mercury, mutual reception. Saturn, Mercury. Oh yeah, by exaltation. But they're not within degree range, but still some influence. So yeah. So the guy is well-rounded, obviously, highly creative. But definitely lends itself to writing as well. The strong Virgo, Libra as well. Libra can definitely be very academic, literary. MC Lord and Virgo, Saturn and Virgo, 0 degrees. Sextile Uranus, that's very good, brilliant. In any case, I think that's it. Sun and Moon are exactly in conjunct, but Sun exalts in Aries. So then again, there's that tension that resolves, and Moon's the third Lord in the 12th. Interesting. Let's keep going. George Orwell, 1984, Animal Farm. Highly political, highly social. Again, 1984, blueprint for the New World Order, maybe, but also wake-up call for the rest of us. Scorpio ascendant, Leo MC, Venus in Leo, in the MC. Gemini, Mercury, and Pluto. And then Cancer, Sun, Neptune, Sun conjunct Neptune, Moon. Sun, Moon, Neptune, Cancer. Very, very creative. Highly creative and expressive. In the 8th house. Very deep, conspiratorial. Right? 1984. Deep in the secrecy, conspiracy. That's Gemini, 8th house. Pretty much like me. Damn. Let's get that Scorpio ascendant. My Venus is right here, 11th house. 11th house. No, 8th. 11 degrees Gemini, 8th house. Very similar. North Node Mars and Libra. Mars and Libra is not good. I mean, it's in poor dignity, right? And Mars and Libra I find not to be as violent as Mars and Cancer. It's more passive. Mars and Libra are really kind of like, they make it look easy. They make it look like everything's just cool and chill, but really they're just overly passive. They don't know how to stand up for themselves or their, they get by being people pleasers, and passive usually. I think Mars and Libra can become overly aggressive, but oftentimes it's just being overly Libran. right? Saturn's in domicile in the fourth in Aquarius, and Saturn's trine this Libra exactly, this Venus, Mars, and it's Saturn's exalted. So Saturn's bringing a lot of dignity to this Mars. Mars is the ascendant lord, so along with North Node. So that's interesting. Like he starts out weak and he has to get strong, right? Because North Node is what we develop later in life. And Mars in the 12th can also be somewhat missing. Hidden, right? A hidden quality. Moon is trine the ascendant from Cancer, also in very good dignity. So Sun is the MC Lord. It's conjunct Neptune and Moon in Cancer. Dignified by the Moon. And Mercury also. So grand air trine, you can see. That's excellent. With Saturn, with Mercury in dignity, Saturn in dignity, Mars in poor dignity, but dignified by Saturn. Jupiter's in Pisces in the fifth. So Saturn's the third lord in the fourth house. Uranus is slightly opposite Pluto, and that's a generational aspect. But that's intense. That's gonna be very intense. Jupiter is also square Uranus, and that's not bad because Jupiter's in domicile and it rules Sag as well. So that's good. But let's see here. Saturn and Uranus are retrograde. So he's not afraid to criticize the government, or society as a whole with Saturn and Uranus retrograde. And then he's got really good dignity planets: Saturn, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter. So third lord in the fourth in Aquarius. So Aquarius deals with society, social issues, writing about social issues, politics, things like that. Grand air trine, Mercury and Gemini. So yeah, very strong for writing and academics. Sylvia Plath, she was mainly a poet, but she did write a novel, The Bell Jar. And I have The Bell Jar. I read it. Great book. She's a great writer. Very interesting to read. What's interesting is that like sometimes the greatest writers are the most difficult and they're not enjoyable. Like try reading Dickens. Like I can't read Dickens. I can't, I just don't understand them. I love reading Sylvia Plath. So go figure. She's very easy to understand. But in any case, Aquarius ascendant with Saturn in domicile in Capricorn. Very strong, right? Grand Earth trine. So very practical, very brilliant. She's a very brilliant lady. Okay. She got her Mercury in Scorpio along with Sun. So a sort of idealization of death, especially with the ninth house. Ninth house is how we view life, our philosophy. So her philosophy is kind of quite dark, and perfectly comfortable with death. Pluto, trine Mercury in Scorpio, Pluto in Cancer. Pluto in Cancer as a woman, as a mother. I've already talked about this, but then also very strong Virgo, stellium, Neptune, Jupiter, South Node, Venus. Right, Venus is not in good dignity here. Venus is in good dignity in Pisces, but North Node in Pisces, as she gets older, Pisces is very creative, but first house is all about being alone. If there's no personal planet, if you have North Node in the first house with no personal planets, it kind of means you're going to be alone. It kind of means the first half of your life you're going to have lots of relationships. Second half you're going to be alone. Pisces is kind of about disappearing. So she wants to disappear alone, which is what she did. She also had a very hard time with motherhood. right? Pluto and Cancer in the fifth. Being a woman, there was like issues here. Pluto is exactly sextile Venus, so very comfortable with the idea of death. Mars and Leo in the sixth. Mars square Mercury, but Mars is in domicile in Scorpio, so that's not super bad, but not great either. I mean, Mars square Mercury, it's quite difficult. Argumentative, very argumentative. Let's see. So Saturn's our ascendant lord. Jupiter's our MC lord. Jupiter's in Virgo in the seventh. Venus is the third lord. Venus is in Virgo. So very strong Virgo emphasis. And then the grand Earth trine. Venus and Libra in the eighth house influence. Moon and Libra in the eighth. So very dark. And then Sun and Mars. Yeah, Sun Mars mutual reception. Not by degree, but by sign. So that's interesting. Main thing for writer is this Virgo stellium, and then a lot of dark thoughts. Chiron in the third is probably really good because it gives her very creative, strange, unusual, dynamic writing, especially poetry. If you read her poetry, you'll understand it. It definitely comes through. Chiron is not a bad planet. Don't let anyone tell you it is. Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, lived in Philadelphia. I saw his house. There's a mural outside his house where he lived. All right, North Node, Ascendant in Scorpio, North Node, and Uranus in Scorpio. So he died young, I believe. He was an alcoholic, very dark figure. Poetry and short stories. Part of Romanticism. Earliest practitioners of short, generally considered the inventor of the detective fiction genre. Sci-fi. He earned a living through writing alone. Financially difficult life and career. And I think he died young. I think he was an alcoholic. Well, Mars in Libra in the 12th. And Mars doesn't have any major aspects except I think that's a quintile. Let me just check here. Yeah, quintile Pluto. How's that? Quintile, biquintile Pluto. The quintile is meant to be a very creative aspect. But let's see. So Ascendant Lord Mars in the 12th in Libra, not very good. Sun is the MC Lord. Sun's in Capricorn with Mercury in the third house. So a career in writing, Capricorn. Serious, very serious. Capricorn is going to be a very serious writer, a hard-nosed writer. A lot of dark, shocking themes coming here. And it's perfectly trine, exalted Venus, conjunct Moon, Pluto, Jupiter in domicile. Here we go. I mean, it's so creative. And if you read his poetry, some of it is so excessive, like it's just like overflowing with like butter and sugar and fat. Even though it's like dark and macabre, it's like kind of gross, sickly sweet almost. And that's the excessive Piscean influence with Jupiter and Venus and domicile. It's not bad, I guess, if you like that kind of thing. It's just a little bit too much. And look how tight Venus and Moon are conjunct in Pisces. Venus is exalted, Jupiter is in domicile, Pluto is in very intense, right? But these three are nice and benefics. South node Taurus. Again, this is not very good. North node, this is basically what I have. North node in the first with Uranus in Scorpio. I mean, our ascendants are almost identical. North node, mine's at 11 degrees, his is at 8. My Uranus is at 3 degrees, his is at 9. But yeah, I mean, I can be pretty dark. I do like dark things, but I'm not going to drink myself to death. In any case, but finances, Saturn and Neptune, neither are very great for finances. I guess Saturn if you're older, Saturn if it's in really good dignity. It's not. Then there's the square to Chiron for the nodes, and he was very wounded individual at home, I guess homeland, right, or early childhood as a child in homeland. Oh yeah, third lord, second house, conjunct Neptune. And then third, Sun, the MC Lord, and Mercury, and then Mars in the 12th, so creative. Right. That's Poe. Everything's pretty much direct, amazing, except for the nodes. Another one who probably couldn't disagree with CNN no matter what. It's just funny to me. All right, J.K. Rowling. Harry Potter needs no introduction. Aquarius ascendant, Sag MC, South Node, conjunct the MC. So Saturn and Jupiter. So Jupiter, so MC Lord is in Gemini, conjunct the North Node. Fourth house. Fourth house, what about fourth house? Fourth house, land. Right? So she's writing about land. She's creating her own world in Harry Potter. So that would be a fourth house thing. North Node, Jupiter, Gemini. All right. Ascendant Lord Saturn's in Pisces, highly creative Pisces, along with Chiron. Chiron, again, for the mythic, for the fiction, for the superheroes, for the, the all the weird beasts of Harry Potter world, right? It's trine Neptune in Scorpio. Neptune, highly creative Scorpio, a little dark. Mars is in Libra, quite passive. She's not very passive. Sun's in Leo, okay, in the 6th. So definitely bring the 6th house will bring in an element of series, repetition, right? So there are many different books of Harry Potter. And then Virgo stellium, very strong Virgo stellium with Mercury at 0 degrees Virgo. Then Venus, Uranus, Pluto, Moon. Very strong Virgo stellium making its way into the 8th house. 8th house, darkness, power, rulership, domination, shared resources, intimacy, darkness, occult, magic, right? Virgo, she's going to write about all the dark occult eighth house things that square the nodes, along with this Uranus is particularly square the nodes, right? Very intense, very strong, very literary, academic, analytic, deep, dark, occultic. Yeah. So we could see like, yeah, the Gemini, Virgo influence. So writing for sure. Jupiter's, directly opposite. The square from Jupiter to Chiron. So definitely a lot of weirdness. Also, the squares and the oppositions. So Saturn is opposite Pluto, with neither affecting the dignity, but the opposition is difficult with Saturn and Pluto. And the square, Jupiter, Chiron, Uranus, square. So she's very shocking, especially with Uranus square the nodes, but also getting into like a lot of disagreements and with people, fights and stuff like that. That's very prominent here with the opposition of Saturn and Pluto, because they're both very hard-nosed. These are hard-nosed planets. So this, but then neither sign is, the dignity don't change in either sign. So it's just sort of, two serious opponents going, battling each other. Plus Sun in the sixth house, right? Eighth house also is unequal relationships, right? We can see that Uranus and Pluto particularly is in conjunct the ascendant in any case. Early rise to career success, J.K. Rowling. Saturn is retro, so she's not afraid to go against the status quo opinion, which is great. I like to see some retrogrades, because otherwise the person's just too damn agreeable with the mainstream. They are the sheep. They are the one of the herd that will run off a cliff as long as the rest of the herd's running that way. J.R.R. Tolkien. I think it's like a thing with writers that like, it's like if you put your initials there, then you'll be more successful. I think that's a thing. Because because letters, like they're working with letters, so it's like breaking it down into its constituent. I'm just making it up, but maybe. I don't know. Again, Virgo, Gemini, ascendant MC with Pluto and Neptune on the MC in Gemini. So very creative, very powerful. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings series, which we all know so well. Moon, Jupiter in the seventh in Pisces. That's going to be brilliant. Ascendant Lord Mercury and MC Lord Mercury at 0 degrees Capricorn, along with Sun in Capricorn. So Capricorn for writing. These are very serious, heavy-duty writers, right? And then you got the square from exalted Saturn at 0 degrees in Libra, and that's a good square because Saturn rules Scorpio, right? Scorpio, Capricorn. Sorry about that. I'm always saying the wrong things. Is Mars in Scorpio, but yeah, that's a good square. It does give some tension, but tension that resolves itself because it rules Capricorn, and that's actually very interesting. When especially it's very dramatic when you have like an opposition or an inconjunct or a square that actually gives dignity to one side or both sides. That works out really well because it makes it interesting. It's tension build up and release, and those are the best releases. When you have tension, when you have to wait for something, when something doesn't come easy, but then it comes and it really comes. It gets like the reward is well worth the effort. That's really good. It feels really, really good. Mars conjunct South Node and in Scorpio, along with Uranus and Scorpio. That's very intense. And that's the third house. So third lord, third house, along with Scorpio and South Node. So writing is going to be very dramatic, deep, and intense. Mercury's in Capricorn, Sirius, fourth house for creating worlds, world creation. Fourth lord, Jupiter in the seventh, exalted, conjunct the moon, Jupiter and moon together, excellent. Venus and Aquarius in the sixth house, so again, bringing in that daily grind, hard work, series, multiplicity, doing things again and again, many books, right? That's definitely helpful. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Mercury retro, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn is slow, and Saturn, Venus have a mutual reception. Saturn, Venus, yeah. Boom. Second lord, sixth, seventh lord. What's interesting also is that Moon Jupiter for like, okay, so Jupiter in Pisces, we can think about like the magic, the wizard, all the good stuff. And Pluto in Gemini is not really bad, but Pluto could be like and also the Capricorn, the dark elements. Doesn't have any really bad um dignity planets. I'm looking for. Oh, Moon is in conjunct Saturn, and neither of these have any changing dignity, so that's a difficult aspect. But Moon's generally good because it's very creative and it's conjunct Jupiter. So, and then Saturn's also in good dignity, so it's not so bad. But this tension, a lot of tension there. Tension here between Neptune and Uranus with the inconjunct. Nothing really much to say about that. Chiron and Mars also interesting. Any case, Uranus is exactly sextile the ascendant, so very brilliant, independent minded, and for writing, very creative writing. The fantasy is coming from here, Moon and Jupiter in Pisces, right? Also Neptune and Gemini conjunct the MC with Pluto. Yeah. Did I check his dignities? Yeah, I did. All right, Mark Twain, Huck Finn, and Tom Sawyer. He was also very witty. All right, he was Samuel Clemens was his real name. Humorist, satirist, lecture writer, novels, Huck Finn, Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He's known for his quotations. He's very witty. He became friends with everyone. Immense public popularity. His keen wit and incisive satire earned praise from both critics and peers. William Faulkner called him the father of American literature. Okay. Scorpio ascendant with Saturn, Mercury, and South Node in Scorpio. So Mercury right in the first house. Mercury in the first house. These are very, very witty people. Their intellect is so conscious, is right up front. Also, adventures, the adventures of Tom Sawyer, Sag. Right. Also Jupiter and Cancer in the ninth house. So very adventurous, very philosophical. Saturn's the third lord in the first whole sign house, but 12th quadrant in Scorpio. Sun is the MC lord, and that is in Sag, conjunct Mars and Venus, second lord, second house. So very sensual. And that's trine. Mars is trine Pluto and Aries, along with Moon. So Mars rules Aries, so that's dignifying this Pluto and Moon, sixth house. So, but that's square Jupiter. Moon rules Cancer, so that's not so bad. So let me just check the sheets here. Jupiter's retro, so his philosophy and religion are contrary. Not going to be very orthodox or conventional religiously, philosophically. Neptune is square Saturn. So interesting, we're seeing a lot of second house influence, first and second house, but Mercury's in the first, right? So very witty, obviously. The third lord is in the first whole sign house, but in the 12th. So very creative writing. But why writing? Mars is in the 2nd. Neptune's in the 3rd. Uranus is in the 4th. Moon's in Aries in the 6th. And perhaps the 6th house, because the 6th house is very academic. Chiron's in Gemini. That's not enough. North Node in Taurus. Friends with everyone. North Node in the 7th. That's definitely, especially also in like a friendly sign like Taurus. Moon's ruling the 9th. So his philosophy is going into daily grind, academic type stuff. So Mercury, best I can say, Mercury on the ascendant is and third lord influencing the ascendant. Saturn and Mercury is driving him to write. But he's just a very, very intelligent person in general. Jupiter has the most strong points. It's exalted. Jupiter is ruling the 2nd house. And the 5th house. So the 5th house of creativity. So Sun opposite Chiron. It's interesting. See, normally people would be like, "Oh, Sun opposite Chiron. You're wounded. You're so wounded." And that's all they would really get out of it. But was Samuel Clemens wounded? Was Mark Twain wounded? Did he have like major emotional wounds? I don't think so. I mean, maybe somewhat, but it didn't show up. I think Chiron is just adding to his creativity. But there's no dignity change for either of these signs here. I don't know what sign. I mean, Chiron may be exalted in or domicile in Virgo, but in any case, Sun is not changing dignity. It doesn't seem to be bad. Yeah. So in any case, Ascendant Lord conjunct the Sun seems to be good because then there's unification. They're not divided. And Mars conjunct the Sun is not bad as well because then the Sun, it's like Mars rules Aries, the Sun's exalted in Aries, so Mars is the exaltation Lord of the Sun, you could say. Mars activates the Sun, gets the Sun moving, doing, active, not lazy. Let's go to Jules Verne. And he wrote 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea or something like that. Yeah, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Journey to the Center of the Earth. He was a sci-fi writer. French author, pioneered sci-fi genre, best-known novels such as Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And these were all long time ago, 1864, 1870, and Around the World in 80 Days. He wrote about space, air, and underwater travel before air travel and practical submarines were invented. Before they were invented. That's very Uranian, 9th house. His third, what did I just say? Uranus, 9th house. So his books have been made into films. I wasn't looking at his chart, and I wasn't even referencing his chart. I just said Uranus, 9th house. In any case, Gemini, Aquarius. Sun conjunct the MC and Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury, the MC, ascendant Lord in the 10th house, conjunct the Sun. Remember, MC Lord conjunct the Sun shows unification of worldliness and the personal sense of self, the body. No division there. And we can compare that to the Moon, see what makes them happy. Moon, Jupiter, trine Saturn. Saturn in poor dignity. Saturn's the MC Lord. So we already know he has a strong career, but we still have to look at Saturn. Saturn's in poor dignity in Cancer. But Saturn is going to benefit this Neptune and this Uranus because it rules. It's in aspecting it mainly this Neptune in the 8th house. But trine the moon and Jupiter. Moon and Jupiter in any sign is a great combination. In most signs, I should say. More difficult in a sign like Capricorn, or I mean here Scorpio, but also it would be difficult in Capricorn. But it's trine Saturn. That's interesting because moon rules. So moon's dignifying, moon and Jupiter are dignifying this Saturn. And that's really interesting. Right. And interesting is excellent. And this is basically a grand water trine with an exalted Venus in the 10th house. So very strong career. Moon ruling the 3rd house. So moon, not in great dignity, but conjunct Jupiter, which benefits the moon a lot, and trine Saturn in Cancer. So that benefits the sun, but I think it also benefits the moon. And that would be 3rd Lord for writing. 3rd Lord, 6th house. 3rd Lord, 6th house is great for writing because now the writing has become like a daily practice and it's very academic. Gemini is the ascendant Lord, Aquarius, and 2nd house. And like I said, 2nd house is still great for writing, not on its own, but it does help. North node Libra, South node Aries, South node Chiron. So definitely with the South node Chiron, he's very familiar with that sort of weirdness, mythology, mythical, just complete. There's no good word for Chiron. It's weird. It's deformed. But for creative purposes, that works out really well. Wounded Healer doesn't sum it up enough for me. It's not enough. You have to look at the whole thing. Uranus is square the nodes in the 9th house, right? So Uranus, outer space, space travel, futuristic, 9th house travel, journey, above the sea, under the sea, in the air, outer space, all that. But that's also 8th house Neptune, opposite Saturn. Saturn being the MC Lord. 8th house would be Neptune would be fantasy. 8th house would be digging deep under the sea, so to speak. Okay. Saturn's retro. Mars, Jupiter. I didn't even notice that. Mars, Jupiter. That's why I have to look. Mutual reception, not by degree, but anyway. Saturn's retrograde. So Saturn retrograde, not afraid to go against the norm, the status quo of society, of government, of law, things like that. Walt Whitman, big bear of a man. I don't know if Walt Whitman wrote any novels, and I should have been more on this, but I wasn't. I mean, I meant to only include authors plus authors who also were poets, but mainly authors. And he was mainly a poet. So, because poetry is something different, I could do a whole thing on poetry, and I probably will need to do that. He's viewed as the first urban poet. His work has been described as a rude shock and the most audacious and debatable contribution yet made to American literature. It's because they were very conservative back then, and he wasn't. Aries ascendant with Pluto, Chiron, Saturn in Pisces. North node conjunct Mars in Aries, Venus in Taurus, Mercury in Taurus. So he was very much a naturalist, right? Loved to bathe naked. Sun in Gemini in the 3rd house. Bingo, right here. Sun is the exaltation lord of Aries. Sextile, the ascendant. So great relationship with the ascendant. Capricorn is the MC lord. That's in Pisces in the 12th. So a creative career. And then Neptune is square these Pisces planets, but Neptune's the co-ruler of Pisces, so it's not bad. It's a good one, good square. Moon is in conjunct this very strong Pluto, Chiron, Saturn, and Pisces. So that's difficult. That definitely makes him like that's in the 5th house. What's it gonna do? It's gonna make him unhappy. It's gonna challenge his mind. It's gonna make him a bit weird. Creative, weirdly creative. Moon's ruling the 4th house. Saturn's ruling the 10th and 11th. In the 12th. It's creativity. A lot of tension there. And this will invoke his sort of enemies, right? Mars is in Aries, trine Uranus in Sag. Uranus conjunct Neptune, and that's his ascendant lord. So shocking. He's very comfortable being shocking. The trine shows it's very easy, very skilled, very natural for him to be Uranian, because Mars is his ascendant lord, and it's perfect. And Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune are both retrograde, so he's used to going against the grain, being a rebel, all that. Venus is in domicile in the 2nd house. So for poetry, right? For writing, Gemini in the 3rd. For poetry, this Venus in the 2nd house along with Mercury. And then this Pisces creativity. This is influencing his subconscious, and there's some difficult angles to this trinity of planets. Very, very serious, heavy trinity of planets in Pisces. It's a very interesting mix of serious. When Pluto and Saturn get together, they're just so heavy duty. Chiron probably doesn't help that in any way. It just makes it more weird. Pisces is so creative. 12th house is so creative. It's all in the subconscious mind. He's a troublemaker because there's the difficult aspects from Neptune. So like dishonesty, I don't know, dishonesty, but like acting, pretenses, just behaving very, wild. And then the moon ruling the 4th. So his homeland, and the 5th, creative Leo, pride. Yeah, just creating a lot of conflict in any case. Yeah, Uranus and Neptune are retrograde. Uranus in particular, retrograde, is very rebellious. Very rebellious. I have Uranus retrograde. I rebel against. I always have. It's like it's not even a thing. It's just like it's who I am. I've always been super duper rebellious. I just way before I knew anything about astrology, or I knew very little when I was a kid. Just ultimate rebellion. Never went away. Jupiter, Saturn, mutual reception. Check that out. Oh yeah. Jupiter, Saturn, mutual reception. So 11th, 12th house, career success, groups, networks, creative group networks. He must have belonged to a creative community. Oscar Wilde. He's pretty interesting. He was an Irish poet and playwright, often writing different forms throughout the 1880s and early 1890s. He was gay, by the way. One of the most popular playwrights in London. His novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is pretty grim. It's a pretty awful movie. I mean, not badly written, just like dark, very, very dark. If you ever watched it, and the circumstances of his criminal conviction for gross indecency for consensual homosexual acts, imprisonment, and early death from meningitis at age 46. So he did not have a very, very successful life. His career was strong. Look at this grand Earth trine. So first of all, very, very practical. But if you look at the planets, it's Virgo ascendant, Gemini MC, with Saturn on the MC in Gemini. Okay, so literary career, yeah. Saturn ruling the 5th and 6th house. 5th house for creativity, for plays, that would be 5th house. Academia, 6th house. Neptune and Pisces in the 7th, highly creative. Even though it's in the 7th, it's not, the only thing about the 7th is that it needs other people in order to be activated. So it's almost like on the ascendant, but with other people. So Neptune and Pisces on the ascendant, but with other people. That's how you can read the 7th house. So it's not as potent as it would be on the ascendant, but it's still quite strong. It's angular, very creative, just needs other people to invoke that. Relationships are going to be very, very nebulous, mystical, spiritual, imaginary. Mercury's in Scorpio, conjunct South Node, but they're perfect trine. Look at all these trines. Grand Earth trine, but then the water trine, very deep with Neptune. So that he can really channel that creativity, that imagination with this Mercury trine Neptune. Mercury's right conjunct the 3rd house cusp and South Node. Mars is the 3rd house ruler, still in the 3rd house, but moving into the 4th house. Venus in Libra with Sun in Libra. Sun in Libra, not in great dignity. Okay, so people with planets in poor dignity, then they can have the outcomes of that. So his sun, his reputation, sun is often reputation in poor dignity, right? Mercury in Scorpio died young, South Node, right? So after the South Node, when this North Node became activated, let's look, what age did he die? Age 46. So age 46, North Node's activated. It's conjunct Uranus, so sudden events. Uranus is not great in Taurus, and it's pulling energy from the ascendant Lord Mercury and the MC Lord Mercury in the 3rd house, and in Scorpio, death. So there's something here, right? And then Mercury is opposite Uranus. Boom. Sudden death. Uranus is not bad in Scorpio, but Uranus is sudden accidents. It is a malefic, especially if, under certain circumstances. And then Mercury is his ascendant lord. Right? So that's not great. Moon's in creative Leo in the 12th. So very, very creative type person. Right? Beautiful, a lot of beauty, good relation with beauty with Venus and Libra in the 2nd house and Sun in Libra. And then very strong 3rd house and, MC. Saturn and Gemini is okay. North Node, Uranus, obviously did not work out too well for him. In general, it can be good. It depends on other things, but, Grand Air Trine, obviously. A lot of really prominent, a lot of talent, a lot of skills. Blue lines, just in general, trine sextile means skills and talents. Sun is in conjunct the North Node, also not very good for vitality. Once that North Node's activated, the Ascendant Lord and MC Lord are deactivated, and then this Uranus becomes activated, and then you get this sudden attack on the Ascendant Lord and the Sun also because of the in conjunct to the North Node. Sun in poor dignity. Even though Venus is here, it just obviously wasn't enough. Let's check. So Saturn's in retrograde, Uranus is in retrograde, so he's very rebellious and definitely not afraid to go against the norms of society, which he wasn't. And let me just check one more thing. So Venus and Mars are actually in fairly good aspect to each other. So he was gay, but I'm looking at the sort of, so Venus is obviously stronger. So, and the sun's in the sign of Venus, so strong Venus, and then a strong, really strong Neptune in Pisces, right? So Venus and Neptune are making it more feminine. So that is my assessment of his gayness. Yeah. Jupiter and Capricorn conjunct Jupiter is not in great dignity, but it's still going to lend itself to fifth house things, so creativity and for playwriting, well, that would be third house, fifth house. Okay, I think that's it. I went through everyone, and I've probably taken long enough, and I looked at all this, and so yeah. That's it for the writers. Definitely, like in summary, a lot of Virgo, Gemini, Mercury, third house, and then a bit of sixth house academic, bit of seriousness, bit of intellectual academia, to make it more, to drive it into the writing realm, right? Instead of the skills of the hands, which is more, it's not academic. Drawing is not very academic. It's more skills and action oriented, right? It's not working. You do invoke the mind with art, but it's much more intuitive and heartfelt and Venusian. Music would be similar to writing, but it's also still usually a bit more Venusian. You get a bit more Capricorn with novel writing, things like that. Virgo, Capricorn, in any case. All right, so that's it for writing. I hate when my camera's out of focus. Guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And just a anecdotal thing. I noticed that Elon Musk just changed the famous Twitter bird for an X, right? It just did it just yesterday, and that's when I changed my name to the what I call myself, the mediocre astrologer. Right, I almost forgot my own name. But the significance of that is the timing that I chose. He chose the same time. The ascendant is going to be different, but he chose it when sun's at 0 degrees Leo. Venus and Mercury are in Leo. Venus is stationary, and Chiron is also stationary. So very potent time to change the logo of Twitter to an X. And I think his goal is to make a one app to rule them all kind of thing. But Venus is stationary. Venus is stationary. Venus is stationary. It's like super duper powerful, right? So, and it's in Leo, and it's conjunct Mercury, and Sun's in Leo. So I mean, it's for timing. Either he has an astrologer working for him, or he's just got great intuition. In any case, that's it for now, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and book a reading with me. I need to really update my website and change the name because it still says macroastrology.com, and I'm going by the mediocre astrologer. And I was thinking as a joke, it would be like, like my tagline would be like, he's okay. Because it's funny. And it would be great. Like, and I could run like billboards, and it'd just be like, like how some people are like, they'll quote like these great testimonials, like, I saw Joe Waxman, he was wonderful. I saw so wonderful, excellent, tops, the best. Mine could all just be like, he's okay, he's all right, he's average, he's good, he's not terrible, right? He's not great, stuff like that. It'd be hilarious. And nobody else would do it. Nobody else would dare do that, but it would be funny, and it'd be tongue-in-cheek. So Joe Waxman, the mediocre astrologer, he's okay. All right, I'll see you again next time. Book a reading with me. That's it for now. Thanks. Bye.